Baruch Hashem Adonai. Blessed is he who comes in the name of Yah. Happy Sabbath. This morning, we would like to look at the subject, Yah'S Qodeshah Way. Yah's way. The way that he has said we ought to live. Yeshua came along and he said, I am the way, the truth, and the light. And so to consolidate that point, turn with me to the book of Yeshayahu, that's the book of Isaiah, and we will take the 35th portion of that book, and we will commence our reading in the 8th verse. And there shall be a highway, and a way, and it shall be called the way of Qodeshah. The unclean does not pass over it, but it is for those who walk the way and not a wandering fool. No lion is there, nor any ravenous beast go up on it. It is not found there, but the redeemed shall walk there, the way of Yah. And so this morning, we want to look at the way that Yah has provided for us to walk. And in searching the scriptures, we come to understand how ignorant we really are. And it is fair to say that all men are ignorant, except that we're all ignorant in different subjects. And it is easy to quantify our ignorance than it is to qualify our knowledge. And even that which we know, there are things we don't know about that which we know, so we remain in the ignorance. But Yah, in his word, has published his thoughts, a reduction to word of his mind, and so we can read it and understand what he really wants us to do. And as I go through this, I ask myself the question, if there was one prophet in the Holy Writ that you would want to invite for Sabbath lunch, who would it be? Who would you invite of the prophets to Sabbath lunch and talk with them? But as I go through this week the book of the prophet Yeshayahu, I would like to invite him to lunch with us today. He is perhaps the most eloquent of the prophets, and he is a man of great penmanship. And he looks at life all the way through from Genesis to Revelation. Yah tells him, I will show you the beginning even to the very end. And so, as we look at this book, we see that the prophet served in the reigns of 4 different kings, not precluding the invasion of Assyria of the northern kingdom. So he had a long ministry. And as I indicated, he's considered to be the most eloquent of the writing prophets. And he's the most expansive in his range of themes. And this morning we want to look at him in terms of how he captured the words of Yah through his vision and his ministry to the kingdom of Judah. We want to do that. In that way, I would ask you now to come with me to chapter 6. Notice something also about the book of Yeshayahu, that it is written not so much chronologically, but it is written in a way that it is more associative than it is chronological. And so we understand that chapter 6 is the chapter that calls him to ministry. Therefore, chapter 6 is really chapter 1 of Isaiah. We see that. So come with me to chapter 6, beginning at verse 1. In the year that the sovereign Uzziyahu died, I saw Yahweh sitting on a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the echo. It filled the temple. Above it stood seraphs, each one had 6 wings, and 2 covered his face, and 2 covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one cried to another and said, Kodesh, Kodesh, Kodesh. When anglicized, we say, holy, holy, holy is Yahweh of hosts, and the earth is filled with his esteem. Can we say that today? That the earth is filled with the glory of Yah. Can we say that meaningfully when we cast our thoughts, our eyes in Gaza? Can we say it if we go to Ukraine? Can we say it if we go to Asia? Can we say it if we go to Africa? Wherever we go, we see men, boisterous men, violent men, unbelieving men, taking up their positions for good or for evil, to cement their eternity one way or another. Yeshayahu said, he saw the seraphs covering their faces before the sovereign Yah. They who reside close to him by his throne cover their faces, while the women in the churches uncover their heads. Even as Paul, the apostle, addressed that in 1 Corinthians chapter 11. Do it, even as the angels cover themselves. And so the occasion here that the prophet speaks of is that he sees the sovereign of the universe. And all other matters were postponed, canceled, abandoned, because the king is in the house. There is no such occasion like this, no other. And so when he saw it, and when he heard when the voice appealed to his tympanic membrane, he was struck. He had never seen worship like that before. He says, and the post of the door were shaken by the voice of him who cried out, and the house was filled with smoke. Our minds are now cast back to that time when King Solomon was dedicating the temple, and in the same way, the temple was filled with smoke, even that the priests at that time could not continue their duties because the king was on the house. If only we could get a glimpse of Yahweh in this, I wonder if that would change anything. But we need not seem like that because he has written this, and we ought to take his word and believe his word. We ought to do that. So when the prophet saw that, he says, woe is me. Not anyone else. He was examining himself in light of the circumstances. Woe is me, I am undone. I'm a man of unclean lips, talking about unclean lips. We see people today in politics and elsewhere, they just blurt out expletives and other things, and nobody bats an eyelid. And nobody tells them, and if you do, they get angry with you that they have unclean lips. But Isaiah here admits that I have an unclean lip, and I live among unclean lips. We can say that we live among unclean people, and we too are no better. We all need Yeshua to clean us up. And so when he said that, I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips, for my eyes of seeing the sovereign Yah of hosts. And one of the seraphs at that particular time flew, took a live coal from the altar with the tongues and touched his lips. And at that particular point, we knew that the man was healed. The man was sanctified. The man was justified before Yah. And so when the voice said, who shall I send? He said, send I me. Are we really ready to take the everlasting gospel to the people at a time when everything is relative and we are seeking absolutes? Truth is trodden down. And if you were to tell anyone that you have the truth, they would scoff at you. Because postmodernism tells us that there is no truth. Everything is relative, and it's determined by the way you language your experience. There is no up and there is no down. The gravity of that thought is what's causing the problem in the society. And so we understand that the prophet says that in the year that King Uzziyahu died, something happened. Something happened during that period of time. And so I'm going to ask you to come with me to the book of Chronicles, that second Chronicles, and we're going to read parts of chapter 26. Beginning at verse 1, then all the people of Yehudi, of Judah, took this man, Uzziah, as you call him in English. In the Hebrew, it's Yeshayahu. He was at that time 16 years old, and they made him king in the room of his father's Amaziah. That's what they did. He built Eloth and restored it to Judah. After that, the king slept with his father. 16 years old was Uzziah when he began to reign, and he reigned 52 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name also was Jecoliah of Jerusalem. He was 16 years old when he was called to the throne. And he reigned 52 years. But as we are about to find out, that 27 years into that reign, he was struck with leprosy. And so 25 years after that, while he still reigned, a son, Jotham, was really functioning for him because he was leprous. I'm showing you this to show you how this man started out, because we're talking about Yahweh here. We're talking about the way of Yahweh, how he expects us to live as examples in righteousness, in all that we do, in speech and in conduct. And he says this, Uzziyahu was there, and he sought Yah in the days of Zechariah, who had understanding in the visions of Yah. And as long as he sought Yahweh, Yah made him prosper. That's an encouragement for us. That's a motive for us. And he went forth and warred against the Philistines and break down the walls of Gath. I've said to you that prophecy is a cycle, not merely a prediction and a fulfillment. And the wall of Jabneh and the wall of Ashdod, these are the very same areas we're hearing in the news today over there in Gaza. And build cities about Ashdod and among the Philistines. And Yah helped him against the Philistines and against the Arabians that dwelt in Gebal and the Mehunims. Yah helped him. We have a people today claiming to be descendants of these people, and there's still war in that area in Palestine. It's a war. But Yah was with him, and so verse 16 catches my attention. It shows you how a man can start out in good condition and dissipate into pride that leads to destruction. That tells us that we ought to keep our eyes on him, Yeshua, always, and not to lean on our own understanding. Not to do that. The facts here in the passage speak expressly that there is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but that way leads to destruction. Therefore, we must walk in the way of Yah and not turn to the left or to the right. It matters not what your pastor says or what your church teaches. What matters is what Yah said. Thus saith the word of Yah. It says, but when he was strong, his heart was lifted up to his destruction, for he transgressed against Yah, his Elohim, and went into the temple of Yah to burn incense upon the altar of incense. That's impudence. That is insolence. He is a king, but he's not a priest. Sometimes we see in our society today, people use their position and they try to usurp their own authority or the authority of someone else. You've seen it not only in this country, but in other countries where politicians very often takes the pulpit in the church and they make their proclamation and their promises. This is a king. And it seemed as if being king of Judah was not enough. He went into the temple, was reserved for the priest to burn incense. He had forgotten something. He had forgotten that he is under the book of the law and not the book of the covenant, the Melchizedek order. He had forgotten that. As so many today had forgotten. And so our minds should race back to the book of Shemot, chapter 19, verses 5 and 6. Because when the children of Israel were about to leave Egypt, Yahweh wanted to show them this very way here. There is a highway to walk. And the unclean cannot walk along that highway. No, you can't do that. So he brought them to Mount Sinai and he spoke morality to them, saying, if you obey me and keep my laws, I will make you a kingdom of priests. You didn't hear me. I said, Yah said he would make them a kingdom of priests. In the Melchizedek order, everyone is a priest. They said everything Yah said we will do, but they did not. They violated the covenant agreement and started to associate themselves with a golden calf, in worship, that is. And so consequently, he gave them another set of rules in the book of Deuteronomy, the second law, and made it known to them in Galatians 3 and verse 24. This is your schoolmaster. You're at a boarding school now. And I'm going to make sure this schoolmaster here gives you the cane until the time of refreshing when the Messiah comes. Hear me, this king here in chapter 26 of 2nd Chronicles, he was trying to usurp the promise of the coming Messiah. Only the king priest should do the things that he was trying to do. But when he was strong, pride, that same degree of pride, or perhaps less of it, that entered into Lucifer's heart. I want to put my throne above the Creator. And we see that in politics today. They have a little authority or a little influence, and they make you think they're on Mount Sinai. And they speak to you as if you are a disposable napkin. No, we ought to respect people and disagree with them when they're wrong. Is it not a free country? Yah gave us freedom of choice, and we ought to exercise that. And your own constitution in this country says that it's all right to disagree. Why then do you get so wroth with those who disagree with you as a people? Why? In verse 17 in chapter 26 says, and Azariah the priest went in after him, and with him 80 priests of Yah that were valiant men, and they withstood him. They withstood Uzziyahu, the king, and said unto him, it appertaineth not unto thee, Uzziyahu, to burn incense unto Yah, but the priests, the sons of Aaron, that are consecrated to burn incense, go out of the sanctuary, for thou hast trespassed. Neither shall it be for thine honor from Yah Elohim. Please leave the sanctuary. You were not called to this office. It's not your forte. It's not for you to burn incense. You are a king. Is that not enough? But you know, when you have a position and you think you're above everybody else, you want to lord it over them. The priest, they're begging him, please leave. Don't trespass. Then Uzziyahu was wroth. He was what? It's the same today. You get angry with somebody in authority, whether it's your local supervisor at work, or whether it is somebody in politics or in religion. They get angry with you. You're not supposed to disagree. He was wroth. And he says that, and he had a censer in his hand to burn incense, and while he was wroth with the priests, the leprosy, did you hear me? Of all the known diseases then, the one that everybody feared was leprosy. It says it even arose in his forehead before the priest in the house of Yah from beside the incense altar. And Azariah, the chief priest, and all the priests looked upon him, and behold, he was leprous in his forehead, and they thrust him out from thence. Yea, himself hasted to go out, because Yah had smitten him when he was strong. when Yah had gifted him the privilege to be king, it got the better of him because he now thought that he had power over everyone else. Where do you see that today? Or do you see that at all today? Someone gets a position and they begin to rule as if the subjects don't matter at all. They do not in the interest, not at the behest of the people, but many are seeking their own legacy. They're seeking their own legacy. And so Isaiah mentions this. Josephus tells us at the very moment in time that the leprosy came on him, there was an earthquake, even in the temple. Zechariah tells us that the earthquake did happen. It happened. Amos mentioned it too. And so it's noteworthy that Isaiah should say, it was in this year that it happened. The sound of the voices of the priest did not deter him. And so Isaiah finds himself now having made himself available to go out to Judah to preach and warn the people, even reminding them of what happened to this king here. Come back to the way of Yah. Because the people were not listening. They were like the people today, an adulterous generation who believe they know it all. Even the churches have departed from the word. That's why Yeshayahu, the apostle, was teaching Timothy. He says, in these last days, the now days, many will depart from the faith, not from the church, not from the building that they meet in each week, but from the faith. They will let their ear be connected to seducing spirits and their minds, and they will practice things and do things that sends a stench to Yah's nostril. They will do that. So Isaiah here said, I'll go. Couldn't have gone before because you have to be sanctified. You have to be justified. Today, the churches will appoint anybody to be a preacher, like Jeroboam. Oh, he went to this university and he graduated with a double master's, and he has a PhD. What does it have to do with spirituality? We read in the book of Acts, chapter 6, that they were simply looking for people to feed the hungry people, the older people. And they said, we want to choose some men, including Stephen, but they have to be filled with the Ruach, just to feed, never mind to preach. So Isaiah, come with me now, chapter 5. I said that chapter 6 is chapter 1. So he's gone out now to preach. He's ready. He's on the road and he's preaching. But he realizes that the people don't listen. So he decides that he is going to sing to them a love song in chapter 5. Listen to him. I'm reading now from the Hallelujah scriptures. Please let me sing to the one I love. Now, you can imagine, and I'm borrowing here from that imaginative mind, that this man, the prophet Isaiah, in his baritone voice, is here singing a love song. It's not just an ordinary song, it's a love song. Can you imagine that? One regarding a vineyard. My loved one as a vineyard on a fertile hill. He's singing this. And we are reading the lyrics of it this morning. And he dug it up and cleared it of stones and planted it with the choicest vine, and built the watchtower in its midst, and also made a winepress in it. And he waited for the yielding of grapes, but it yielded rotten wine. Now hold it there. The prophet is singing a love song to Judah. And he says, I have a lover. And he says the lover is he. In an age of gender fluidity, this could be misunderstood. It says, my lover is he who has a vineyard, and he waited for the yielding of grapes, but it yielded rotten grapes. In your edition, it most likely said wild grapes. And now, O inhabitants of Jerusalem and man of Yehuda, please judge between me and my vineyard. What more could have been done to my vineyard that have not been done in it? Why? When I waited for the yielding of grapes, did it yield rotten one? Now, Isaiah switches now from he to I, as if to say the vineyard is his. And so you can understand the people are held spellbound, because I wanted to know, what is he talking about? He has a vision. Chapter 6 tells us that. He saw Yah sitting on a throne. First time, perhaps, he sees what holiness looks like. Some of us don't consider it an issue. It is an issue, a big issue. Yah must be respected. When he sees it, he sees his own ignorance, at which time simultaneously his knowledge increases. But even that which he knows, even that which he sees, he has questions about what he sees. So while his knowledge increases, his ignorance also increases. Who shall I send? He says, send me. But he doesn't go to preach in the traditional way. He sings a love song, and he gets to the place now where he's saying, what must I do? What more could I have done to save you? He's asking the people. He's putting the responsibility on them morally to make a decision. What more could I have done? You remember this, don't you? If you remember this, you will also remember the technique that Nathan used on David. David, as you know, saw this young woman bathing, climbed up onto his veranda when he should have been out in the spring fighting war with his people. But he saw Bathsheba, and you know how he behaved, and thought it was all covered up. But Yah sent Nathan to him, and Nathan said to him, O king, there were two men in a city, and one was rich, had cattle and sheep and goat and money, and he was just rich. And this other man, he had a little ewe lamb. And this king took the ewe lamb in the context of his own wealth. David was angry. You see, he's using a parable to let him know that I'm talking about you. Have you ever been in a situation where you hear the speaker is speaking and you're thinking, oh, wretched people, then you realize the speaker is talking about you? Nathan said, you are the man. David said, that man is worthy of death. Nathan says, that's you. This morning, who do you think I'm talking? I'm talking about this generation. This generation. Had it not been for the mercy of Yah, everyone would be filled with leprosy. What do you mean, everyone? That's what sin is. Sin is leprosy. And so Isaiah uses this technique, using parabolic language to engage the people. And he asks them the question, what must I do to the vineyard? I have tilled it, and I have planted good grapes. By now it should have yielded good fruits. I need the grape juice for tabernacle. Verse 5, and now please let me inform you what I'm going to do. My vineyard, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take away the hedge, and it shall be burned, to break down its wall, and it shall be trampled down. And I lay it waste. It is not pruned. I'm not going to prune it anymore. I'm not going to dig it. I'm going to leave you alone. I'm not. It's like Isaiah here had sent the people WhatsApps, messages. He had sent them emails, messages. He had called them on the phone, and they wouldn't respond. And he asked, well, what more could I have done to interest you, to win your approval for what Yahweh said? And you can hear the people saying, well, you couldn't have done anything more. You've done everything. I've sent you emails up and down, and you just not interested. So I'll leave you alone, says Isaiah. He said, I'm going to take away the borders now, the fences. I'm just going to let it overgrown. I'm going to leave you by yourself. And so verse 7 said, for the vineyard of Yah of hosts is a house of Israel. It's you. The vineyard that I'm speaking about, using parabolic language and singing you a love song, is you, Israel. You, the believers. You in the church. You are the pleasant plant. He looked for right ruling, but sees oppression. For righteousness, sees weeping. Woe to those who join house to house. You didn't hear me. Those of you who, because of your wealth, you just buy this and you buy that, and you're buying all the houses up so you can wait until you retire and enjoy. He said, whoa, it's a curse. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The time is coming when the man who doesn't have much will consider it a blessing. Those of you who join house to house, who had field to field, until there is no room, and you are made to dwell alone in the midst of the land. In my hearing, Yahweh of hosts, truly many houses shall be waste. All that you're buying up will be waste. Big and the fine ones without inhabitants. For 10 acres of vine, vineyard, one bath, and the homer of seed yields 1 ephah. Woe to those who rise early in the morning, pursuing strong drink, who stay up late at night. Wine inflame them. Some people just get up in the morning and go into the bar. He says, woe unto you, curse unto you. And that's why Peter, in the book of Acts chapter 2, had to get up and say, no, it's only 9 o'clock. We are not drunk. We are not like these people. We're not. And so, as I indicated earlier, that this Yeshayahu is under the law, the book of the law, not the book of the covenant. He is not under Melchizedek order, but he was trying to usurp that and to behave as if he's a king priest. So, come with me to Zechariah 14 that I mentioned earlier, but I didn't give you the chapter. In verse 5. Remember, the king was okay as long as he kept in relationship with Zechariah. Verse 5, and you shall flee the valley of the mountain, for the valley of the mountains reach to Atzal, and you shall flee as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Yeshayahu, sovereign of Yehuda, and Yahweh my Elohim shall come all the Kodeshim with him. You didn't understand what I'm saying. Zechariah here is letting you know all that happened to the king, Yahoo, will happen again in the end time, in the sense that there is going to be a great earthquake, and the people who are multiplying wealth, houses, land, they're going to have to flee just like that. That's what he says. But you try telling them that. People will tell you, well, I have a family to feed, and I must go to work on the Shabbat. And I can't afford to keep the feast days because my church, they say, teaches that these things are done away with. At whose command? Did you not read Matthew 5:17? Think not. Don't even conceive the thought that I did away with these things. I've come to magnify them, to show you how to live, to show you the way. There is a highway, and the unclean cannot walk on there. And so the call is for Judah, contemporary Judah, the churches, whether messianic or otherwise, even Judaism. And I find it strange. I tell you why I find it strange. Because you have, as we've discussed here before, three groups of people. And all three, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, saying Abraham is our father. And Yeshua had this conversation with some Pharisees in the book of John, chapter 8. And they were trying to pass off a slight on him. Listen to them. We know who our father is. Why did they say it like that? Because they had assumed that he did not know who his father was, because there were rumors that Joseph was not his father and his mother was pregnant with him. He said, if Abraham was your father, you would do what Abraham did. And in Genesis 26 and verse 5, we see that. He kept the commandments, the statutes, the ordinances. He was just faithful. And then he said, you're like your father, the devil. You're like Satan. If you're rebelling against Yah, then there is no other way of putting it. You decide you're not going to keep the Shabbat, you're not going to keep the feast day, you're not going to listen to what the word said, then I don't care how well you dress, neither how eloquent you are. Whatever letters you may have after your name, your resume is not written until Yah writes it. And so you better come with me now to the book of Matthew. You know, I find this interesting because when I look at the disciples and some of them, how they died in commitment to Yah. Mark, we heard that he was dragged by horses in Egypt. He died in North Africa, Mark. We heard Thomas, who did not believe, but now he was sent as a missionary to India. He died in Madras. They killed him. And then Matthew here, who we're reading, you know where he died? He received his martyrhood in Ethiopia. You know what interests me about that? Matthew gospel is written to Jews. Paul was sent to the Gentiles, and he died in Ethiopia. What is that telling you? It tells me that he went to Jews in Ethiopia. And so let's read it anyway. That's just a sidebar. The word says in verse 32 of chapter 27, Matthew. And as they came out, they found a man of Cyrene. Cyrene by name. Cyrene, again, is North Africa. So I'm just showing you how we have a investment in this salvation issue here as a people. And when they were come unto a place called Golgotha, that is to say, a place of the skull, and perhaps you understand why David killed Goliath and took the head of Goliath to a place of the skull in Jerusalem, Golgotha, and the place is called Golgotha. You understand that, don't you? They said in verse 4, they gave him vinegar to drink mingled with gall, and when he had tasted thereof, he would not drink. And you see what the Messiah went through? And we have the gall to reject him? And so come with me to verse 49. The word says that the rest said, let us see whether Elias will come to save him. He had saved many people. Let's see whether Elias will come. Yeshua, when he had cried again with a loud voice, yielding up the spirit, and behold, the veil of the temple. Did you hear me? You see, our subject this morning is really about Yah's way. And I indicated to you by way of chapter 26 of 2nd Chronicles that what Yeshayahu was doing was trying to usurp the role here of the coming king priest. So we're in the temple again. He said, Yeshua, when he cried a loud voice, yielded up the spirit, and behold, the veil of the temple was rent in twain from top to the bottom, and the earth was quaked. There was an earthquake. The earthquake here signified this is the man, not Uzziah. And what did he do before that? He says, and he came and he did what? He healed all the leprous people, leprosy. All that was an indication. This is the Messiah. You can't do it, Uzziah. That's not for you. The other priests were right to turn you out. But the king priest here, he healed the lepers. And on one occasion he said, but were they not 10? Where are the other 9? And the word says, and the graves were opened. Wow. And many bodies of the saints who had slept, they came up too. They came up. And so through the superlative eloquence of Isaiah, a man who, as you read him, he's subject to critical acclaim. Some love him and some love him less. And his reputation is one of the finest. In all the Coda writ, oh yes. And so this man provides for us a ray of hope where a cloud of darkness had settled over us, because he's letting us know even at the end time, when the Messiah comes, from one new moon to the next, Isaiah 66 and verse 23, the Sabbath must be kept. And he's singing this love song even to us right now. And it's interesting, that song should have been sung by a woman, because he's saying, my lover is he. But he was using parabolic language, as Yah says in Hosea chapter 12 and verse 10, I have also spoken by the prophets, and I have multiplied vision and used similitudes by the ministry of the prophet. That's how he spoke to us. And sometimes when we borrow things like that and speak in allegory, the people don't always understand. It's not for the multitude. Isaiah chapter 26, 1-3. Come with me there. Let's hurry up and bring this to its close. But we're going to do it patiently but quickly. Did you understand that? In that day shall this song be sung in the land of Judah. We have a strong city. Salvation will Yah appoint for walls and bulwarks. Open ye that gate, that the righteous nation which keepeth the truth may enter in. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he what? Trusteth in thee. Oh, yes. So let's not be like Ephraim. As Hosea says in chapter 7 and verse 8, Ephraim has allowed himself to get mixed up with the nation. Ephraim is unturned bread, baked on a griddle, is unbaked, off-baked. Don't be like that. So today we are learning that we got to do better than we're doing, and we must walk in the way of Yahweh. We must walk in his way, not the way of the Gentiles. We must not walk in the way of the Gentiles. You see, ignorance has many defenders, but they have no defense. And truth is never settled by the weight of your emotion or your opinion. Truth is exclusive. It is exclusive. If I said, this word of Yah is true, anything else that comes that is not saying the same thing cannot be true. The law of non-contradiction says two things cannot be true that are opposite at the same time. So what is coming up on the world is a time of trouble, we're told, Jeremiah chapter 30 and verse 7. But I want to encourage you that conflicts builds character. But it's a crisis that defines it. And that's the only thing we can take into the kingdom, our character that we have built over time. And therefore, what happens to you is not the issue. It's how you respond to what happens to you. And so failure, you may have failed many times, but failure is an event, not a person. I'm not a failure. I'm a person. It's an event that I just didn't do right. And the same is you. Don't let anybody put you down as a failure. It was only an event. Because we're seeking now to walk in the way of Yah. And anything else they tell you that is not found in the word, it is counterfactual. It is counterfactual. It's a verbal irony. Understand that. And so as we look into Yah's word this morning and how the prophet Isaiah presents it, that Yah has a vineyard. And he uses a love song to appeal to us. Because as he spoke to Judah then, he's speaking to Judah now and Israel. Yah makes no covenant with anybody else other than Judah and Israel. And all the churches collectively are represented in that general assembly found in Hebrews 12 and verse 23. You better understand that. Get rid of all your denominational psyches and names. One assembly, he has one flock. He told his disciples, I have one flock. Go now to all the nation and teach them all that I have commanded you. Do that. Because all that, I have sheep in other places, but those sheep must come into my pasture. You hear what David says. He is my shepherd. And so he's coming to rebuild David's tabernacle. He's my shepherd, and when he's your shepherd, you shall not want. You walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and you will not fear any evil, because his rod is what? It comforts you. And he prepares a table before you, even in the presence of your enemies. And he anoints your head with oil, even as he anointed Isaiah. And then when the voice comes and says, who shall I send? All of us collectively ought to be able to say, send I me. In Yeshua's name, I pray. Hallelujah.